Chez, episode 21. Very dear special guest for me, Sean Foley. How are you, Sean?
I'm well. How you doing, bud?
I can't complain. Very excited to have you on the show. As an aspiring coach myself, to have a well-established figure on the PGA Tour like yourself is a lot of fun for me. Where are you, and are you impacted by the COVID-19?
Yeah, I live in Windermere, Florida. I'm obviously originally from Toronto, Canada. Toronto is still home, but this is where I live. Yeah, of course, every walking soul on the planet is impacted, by this. So it's an interesting time. It's I think what you see with it is that the way today is in society, it becomes very difficult to make up your mind on, what it is. And because there's so much information, and that segues obviously into, the golf swing as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many. You can watch 5 different teachers post a video of Sam Snead, and they'll all say he's doing different things.
Correct. You're absolutely right. Any worries at all with the PGA Tour restart? Are you worried? I know you're a father and all that. Are you worried about your travels and all that?
I mean, I'm not really someone who worries. I don't find it's very responsible. Technically, in the past, when I worried about things, they never happened. They just had me stressed out till I realized that they didn't happen, right? So it's like the relief I felt came from the amount of stress I put on myself. So I'm not ignorant to what it is. I've tried to look at the scientific aspects of it. So technically, 45 years of age, I'm pretty fit. I've kind of always worked on being healthy. I mean, I like to party as well, but it's a nice balance. But I think that you also can't not look at the fact that people between 40 and 50 have got very sick from this and have died too. The math would show me that that's probably not going to happen, like really wouldn't happen. So it's just to be obviously educated on what the concern is. As far as the PGA Tour goes, I know they're not going to start something until they realize they've got it all where it needs to be. That being said, no one's gone through this before. So I can't imagine the first week that is going to just run perfectly anyways. So right. The key is something I've always, talked about in my golf coaching is about the importance of acceptance. And so that's what it's going to take. Look, it's not going the first week or second week or who knows how long, right?
Yeah.
It's tricky because the scientists wanted everyone to be in a decline of 14 days before they started phase 1 of some opening measures. But many of the states that are opening now are still at an incline. So it's a tug of war in the fact of if people stay in for a long time, then the thing is going to go away quicker. But the problem with that is there will be starvation, violence, economic disruption, disorder, depression, all that too. So it's kind of like the lesser of two evils. Do you have to get started and do it, knowing that there'll be a sacrifice of a lot of people? I mean, that's some crazy things to think about.
It sure is.
To me, everyone sees it different, and the way that you see it isn't necessarily right. It's just what you believe. So I think the key is, as humans, as people, as we go out there, that we're very accepting of others and how they choose to go about it. So I was just at the gas station a couple of days ago, walked in, I had my mask on or whatever. And then the guy walked in without a mask, and the guy made a comment to him about not wearing a mask. and then it got a little heated, and it was so unnecessary. But the point is that, like, that's that guy's right. He can do whatever he wants. Look, we're in a big world with a lot of people, and we're all going to run into each other's belief systems. And so to me, I think right now is just really about, when I go on tour, obviously, what's the simple things you can do? You can have wipes for your hands. You can wear a mask. When you get on the plane, you can wipe it down. And just be in control of the things that you can control.
I'm hoping that the PGA Tour basically organizes all the travels between events to events, because I think if there, let's say, a couple chartered flights from event A to event B, I think that at least monitoring the travels of basically everyone is the safer route to basically, just the first event is in the Dallas area. Well, people are going to fly out of Fort Worth. People are going to fly out of Dallas Love.
People are going to fly out of Scotland, England, Denmark. It's tricky. It's just it's a massive. First of all, like I said, we don't have any blueprint to go back to. So at the PGA Tour, I'm sure I bet you there's a lot of people. The PGA Tour is a well-groomed business, right? Everyone knows their position. It runs beautifully. Pretty much, we almost never have any kind of issues with fans or any, you get the people yelling and stuff, but for the most part, there's never been a headline at PGA Tour event, something terrible happened, right? So I would imagine that those guys have been 24/7 trying to figure out all the things. And the thing is, it's difficult because you'll have the scientists saying this, and then the leaders of the country saying this, leaders of many countries. So, I'm not saying that I could do a better job. It's just, there's a lot of unknowns, but I think what you need to do is listen to the experts in this, because, it's going to go and then come and then go and then come. So it might be the new normal, but I'm going to tell you, there's going to be a lot of guys who have the ability to fly private who probably aren't going to go on a charter jet. The issue of, say, going somewhere, becoming positive with it, and then having to be quarantined in that place at your own expense for 14 days. So I just don't think there's any way we could start without having a lot of problems. But the thing is that, these are new problems, so we're going to have to figure out new solutions. So, as far as trainers on tour, and chiropractors and physios and osteos, I don't see them having a designated place where players are going to go in 10 in a room, all sitting there, getting treated and touched. I don't see that. As far as the Caddy Player Association, players are going to have to pull their own club out of their bag.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be. The problem is that human beings are so habitual. And, just to look in the state of Florida, as soon as they kind of relaxed some of the measures, I went out the other day and it was like everyone's just fighting to get back to when it was normal.
Yeah, you're right.
It's never going to be normal. So you got people out there who say it's my civil liberties to do as I please. I get that. And then you got people who are wearing this mask, and then so I think in most cases in life, right, things become extreme. So people are either too scared of it or not scared enough. And I think to be in that moderate position is to, one, understand the epidemiology of it, understand what the scientists and the doctors are saying. Okay. So it's very tough to watch a commercial with a bunch of nurses and doctors saying, please stay home, because they're seeing unbelievable things, right?
Yeah, they're seeing the worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst. And so I think you got to look at everything, but am I going to look over my shoulder every time I do something? And no, of course not. Of course not. But what can I focus on? diet, sleep, and exercise and sunlight. That's all going to benefit my immunity.
Yeah.
So it's kind of know what you can do and then just accept everything outside of yourself. And I think that that's the only way to go about doing it.
You mentioned that you're from Toronto, so tell me a little bit about growing up in Toronto. When did golf enter your life?
Well,
Did you
I was,
play junior golf, amateur golf?
yeah, I was born in Toronto, and then my dad was a salesman for DuPont. So he moved from Glasgow from Scotland, 1967. He was a chemist. He got hired for DuPont to work in photochemicals. And then he ended up being converted into a sales guy. And so at 6, I moved to Delaware. At 7, I moved to San Francisco. At 9, I moved to LA. At 12, I moved back to Toronto. At 13, I moved to Vancouver. And then at 15, I moved back to Toronto.
Okay.
So
you did not grow up in Toronto.
No, right. I grew up. So I started going to the range with my dad in Los Angeles when I was 10. And
Okay.
my dad just played kind of business golf. He was obviously a huge soccer fan. Played golf, business wise, played at Cedar Brae in Ontario there. And then just used to take me to the range. So never told me a single thing. Never, he didn't even have golf books. It's amazing that my dad probably knows less about the golf swing than almost anybody. And I've been his son the whole time. So just something I kind of found on myself. And I much preferred like the range to playing. And then I've always been a very observational person. So whether that's politics, religion, whatever it is, I've just always observed what's going on around me. So, I'd see the better players and look at what they did and ask them questions. And then my dad got me some lessons kind of early on once I showed interest. So I learned my first lessons were with Greg McHatton, who's kind of one of the patriarchal figures in the golfing machine.
Okay.
So, I remember learning about like angles and things like that right away. I think that's how my dad, being a scientist, I think that's how he wanted it. I think he saw a lot of opinion in obviously golf instruction, which there is and still is. And opinions are fine, but facts are better. And so I started on that. And then when I moved back to Toronto, he got me a junior membership at Cedar Brae. I just played a lot at that time you remember Gordy Burns?
I do.
Okay. So I used to play with Gordy, and when Gordy was we were both 13. Gordy must have been one of the best 13-year-olds in the world, no doubt. I thought I was decent, and this guy, actually, the first good player that I'd met in Valencia, in LA, who was in the junior program with me was Jason Gore.
Who I've interviewed
right?
earlier. Yeah.
And he was really good. And then when I met Gordy was really special player. So I used to play with Gordy, Steve Nash, and Mike Nash. And they were all very good players. And so I got a lot better at playing during that time. And then when I moved to Vancouver, I was in the junior program at Shaughnessy. And so my which is a great place, right? And Jack McLaughlin, who was one of the real pros in Canadian golf, was the director of golf at Shaughnessy. So my dad made me a deal. He got me a junior membership as long as I got to the golf course myself. So it was a 2-hour bus ride from North Van to Shaughnessy, there and back. So that's what I appreciate about my dad. He grew up like a pauper, really poor, made something of himself, and then gave me opportunity, but still made me work for it. That was always mandatory. And I don't know if I really liked him during that time sitting on the bus for 2 hours, but if you want to learn about life, just go on a bus for 4 hours a day, like in the formative part of your life, right?
Yeah. You see all kinds of people.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was, you know, you get off the bus, I get off the bus and then walk a mile to Shaughnessy, and then I would hang out in the pro shop with the pros. I love that. I did that wherever I went. And as soon as they got tired of listening to me ask questions, then I'd go out to the range, and we had like Brent Franklin and Jeff Kramer, Ray Stewart, Lori Kane. Zoka would be around from time to time. So I would just sit on a wire basket and watch Mr. McLaughlin teach all these people. But Jack was much more into like footwork and rhythm than I had kind of grown up in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned some of that too. And then my dad got transferred again for the last time back to Toronto. So he asked Jack McLaughlin, he wanted me to continue with good mentors. So Jack called Ben Kern at the National. And Ben is the pro,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the only guy at that time, well, really since then, who played high level on the PGA Tour, and then obviously befriended Knudsen, and then became the director of golf at arguably one of the great courses in the country, where it was just a factory of good players. And so then I got a job at the National on the divot crew, like working on the divot crew.
Nights or?
So we used to have to do divots from 1 till 3 o'clock.
Okay.
And so, you know, Brian McCann, myself, Mark Henderson, Danny King,
And those are all
Brendan Little, Butchie, all those guys from the time I was like 15 years old. And I just fell in love with Ben. I wanted to dress like Ben. I wanted to walk like Ben. I wanted to eat like Ben. I wanted to be exactly Ben Kern. And then it got to the point where I would go and talk to Ben about the swing, and he couldn't really answer my questions anymore. So probably at about 16, I started to really look a lot into Chuck Cook stuff and people like Mike Hebron and Croker, just trying to learn as much as I could. And then I went to play college golf at Tennessee State in Nashville. We were like a kind of a weak D1 school. And then after I graduated, I started teaching golf with the John Jacobs Golf Schools. Was pretty good at it. Did that for 2 years. Taught, I don't even know how many thousand people in that time. But my whole thing always started out with just being able to get someone to hit the shape of the shot that they couldn't hit. Because we can talk about golf swing, we can talk about all the nuances, the intricacies, but at the end of the day, people are just trying to like use less balls when they play golf.
Correct.
Right? When you know how long you sit there and you sit there in the grill room after, and everyone comes in and tells what they shot. They didn't tell if they were on plane or not. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's always a score. And so I think that's the blend. The difficulty is in working with Justin Rose and Cameron Champ and Danny Willett and all these players that I've worked with, is how do you improve them without ruining what's sacred to them? So what they brought, how they got to that point without knowing what you want them to know. How can you improve them without having them lose themselves?
Correct. And it's and one thing for me, because obviously we've seen each other a lot on the PGA Tour over the years. You're talking about shot shape. I was when I first got on the PGA Tour, I thought that guys willingly shape shots both sides on demand. And the more time you talk about the Justin Rose, you talk about the premium ball strikers can do it. But I was really surprised to see how many PGA Tour golfers just hit the same shot time and time again to kind of produce a result without having to work at it too hard. And that's one thing that really caddying for Mark Hubbard, caddying for Russell Knox. I mean, Russell doesn't really have a shape to a shot. It's just dead straight. It's just amazing to watch. And Mark's more of a drawer of the golf ball. And so it's really what you said is so basically you're trying to have them being a little more creative? Is that what you're trying to do, or?
No, it's just, improving their ability to hit in between shots, improving their ability to hit tee shots into left to right winds that is into.
Mm-hmm.
I think like into off the left is a skill shot. It's not really a golf swing. It's like, it's an understanding that basically what you're doing is hitting a controlled pull.
Correct.
Well, your whole life, every time you pull it, you react negatively to it. So it's not something your brain's going to want to do that much. So it's just like I said, it's just improving. Like what we're trying to do is basically get to a point where we land it in the same part of the club face. And then from what I've seen is, for the most part, guys return the face pretty square. So are they having to do that really quick with their hands? There's guys who do that, and those guys talk about rhythm and time, and that's a big deal to them, right? I would say that rotating the arms this way and putting a big torque into the club takes a little bit more timing. But look, there's a lot of people who do things that could be looked at as being inefficient, but they do it so much they become efficient at it. So as long as it's not hurting them, I mean, I've looked a lot into kind of motor skill learning and human patterns and behaviors as far as like physically. I mean, if you got a tour player who comes to you at 29 and he's swung a certain way his whole life, you're crazy if you think you can change that a lot.
Absolutely.
It's super, super hardwired. So in the case like Danny Willett, when Danny came to me, he was quite injured from what he was doing. So he had no option really. So I think if Danny didn't get hurt, because what we're going to deliver over the next couple of years is a really, really strong ball striker. I think him getting hurt kind of opened his mind to what he might have to do going forward. Whereas when I start with Cameron Champ at 15 years of age, I'm standing on the range. There's a 15-year-old kid sitting in front of me at 185 ball speed. He hits really hard down on it and comes and swings way left.
For how far he hits it and how low his ball flight is, it's a funny story about Cameron Champ. The first time I've ever met him was the 2017 U.S. Open. I was caddying for Russell, and on the range they had the TrackMan with like the big, 30-foot tall screen with the numbers and all that.
What was that, Aaron Hills?
Aaron Hills.
Yeah, that week he got up to 203. I remember that. We're
right next to him with Russell. So Russell's hitting golf balls, and Cameron starts wailing drivers. And Russell, I remember, he said, Johan, let's pick the bag. Let's go somewhere else. So we literally moved so we didn't have to face the board with all the numbers and everything. Because, he was demoralized. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I'll tell you that week on the Saturday, because he was an amateur, he made like a 30-foot putt on the third playoff hole of sectionals to get in.
Mm-hmm.
So on Saturday, he was really pumped. And he was like in 6th place. And Brad Faxon came on the range to just take a look because Cameron was kind of in contention. He wanted to take a look at it. And so I had the TrackMan up. And Cameron's hitting it. It says 184, 184, 184. And Faxon goes, well, that's fast, but I thought it would be faster than that. And I said, he's still hitting 3-wood. So as soon as he got to driver that day, he got to 202 twice. I've never, ever seen him ever get above 199. And he was on the range at 202. And that kind of low to mid flight was carrying like 329 yards. I mean, that's the thing that when he hits that one, when he's swinging good and he's able to hit that bullet, and it's almost not, it's not much higher than a soccer goal.
No.
But it carries 300 yards. I mean, you as a player know how crazy that is. Because if you could have got up on the tee every time that you felt uncomfortable and hit a low bullet that went 330, you would never, like, people always say to me, like, why don't you have him hit it up in the air more? And it's like, because it goes out of bounds.
Correct.
So the thing is at that speed, because he doesn't have much in the way of aerodynamics as far as maxing out a flight like Justin Thomas does. High launch, low spin.
Mm-hmm.
He's low launch, either very low spin or low launch with high spin. It's pretty straight.
Yeah, no, it's now I have my good friend Kurt Koala caddying for him. I know you arranged that, and I remember specifically it started in Knoxville in 2018 on the now Corn Ferry, but it was the web back then, and I just was so happy for Kurt because I've heard about Cameron. My first time was at obviously Erin Hills, and it's just and I remember his win in Napa, that drive he hit on 18, just an absolute pipe. And Kurt, I interviewed Kurt, like I said, and he mentions that drive in his interview, and I've never seen a guy hit it that far, but that straight.
Yeah, and the thing is, so when you get a kid like Cameron Champ, I understand it now, but at that point, I didn't really understand how he's generating that much energy. So he did things in different ways. So the thing is, if you have a method in your mind or a belief system of what's right, then you're going to destroy that person. Mm-hmm. And so basically, I looked at it. Okay, if you got that kid, so people say that he's 2 down and 2 left. But as you know, pin high is everything in golf.
Yeah.
All right. So when Cameron gets to average TrackMan numbers for a tour player, the ball is so high in the air, it doesn't even have a purpose. Like, it would be a shot you would hit on a par 5, and in his case with a 7-iron from 230, and it doesn't look right. So obviously the way that he flights it, he's got enough speed that he doesn't have to be that efficient with the strike to make the ball go the necessary distance. So you look at a kid like that and go, all right, okay, he has this weapon that's unlike anyone in golf. His long iron plays very strong. Mid irons are good. Short irons and wedges were not nearly up to par. So a couple of weeks ago, someone asked me to send like a 4-iron of Cameron, a video. And I looked through my phone over the years, and I had like 3 driver swings. And then I had just like thousands of swings of wedges and short irons. Yeah. Because we don't really stand on the range and hit long irons.
No, well, I mean, he uses them maybe 10% of a round, if that.
Yeah, 80% of our time is spent from 150 yards in. And it takes time. And you got to be patient through that whole time frame because, look, man, he's such an athlete that his nervous system is just wired different. So he's the best at hitting it hard with no spin. So, of course, it's going to take time to hit it soft with a lot of spin.
Yeah.
But I would argue that he could learn that more so than guys could learn to do what he does.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's incredible, incredible what he does. And when you think as, you know, for me, caddying for Russell and Mark, well, their game is built totally differently because on an average par 4 on the PGA Tour, Mark and Russell will have between, I'd say, a 9-iron to a 4-iron into the green. So they need to make a lot of their birdies between 130 and 200 because that's what we're going to get a lot, especially a course like Bay Hill, close to where you live. Like Mark and Russell can't carry the bunkers on a lot of those dog legs, so we're gonna be hitting in 7-irons and 6-irons when guys like Cameron Champs and Jason Days are having flip wedges, and it's, you know, that's where also you learn that there are courses. We're talking about Erin Hills, and Russell didn't stand a chance. There's a lot of those par 4s where we had fairway woods in, and Cameron probably had wedges.
Well, the thing about that 18th hole at Napa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the tee shot went like 365, but then he hit 8-iron from 198 straight up in the air. That was almost a perfect shot.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what we know about the more loft I have, the more spin I have. The more spin I have, the less the ball goes offline. Like, I can't remember the last time I snap hooked a lob wedge. So that's the other advantage that they don't talk about when they talk about distance is you've got a guy who can quite easily in control hit 7-iron 210 yards. I mean, 210 yards for a lot of other players is a 4-iron. So the club is further away from you. It has less loft. It's harder. It's just a harder shot.
When you have a player with that type of power, that's what I'm teaching my guys that are very powerful is they need to understand that their margin of error is much wider. If you can just find a way to hit the fairway or to hit it in play, you have such an advantage margin of error wise, because a bad shot with a 9-iron is not as bad as a bad shot with a 4-iron where a normal tour player is. So it's very psychological to realize the advantage you have and to build confidence on that. To me, that's very important in teaching my guys and girls is the longer they are, they need to basically feel invincible because their margin for an error is much wider than the guy who's constantly hitting 5-irons into par 4s on the PGA Tour. That's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, I think though too with distance though is I think Tiger Woods is the greatest iron player to ever live, right?
Yeah.
But he was so good out of the rough too. And that's I think that's important is that Cameron maxes out like, all right, I'm just going to hit this thing and I'll send it. And if I'm hitting it, I mean, his shot that goes straight has to be almost perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he'll do that. But then when he gets off a little bit, it's not wide, but just really knowing what the lie means in the rough. So, how certain type of Bermuda, how much slower is the ball coming out? Is it jumping? Ryegrass, all those different things. So I think that long players would do well to practice a lot out of the rough to get some wisdom on what changes. Because, the year Bubba Watson gained almost 2 strokes against the field per day off the tee, he only hit 47% of his fairways.
Yeah.
But if I went up there and hit it 340 down there on a 500-yard par 4 is a long par 4. So if I've got up there and hit it 350, well, I mean, I'm probably going to hit a pitching wedge or a gap wedge out of the rough from 150. I mean, finding a way to get it on the middle of the green is not going to be that difficult. And 500-yard par 4s play over par. So even if I'm in the rough every day, I'm probably going to make 4 4s. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, it depends. If the rough is super nasty, then Cameron just pulls out that 4-iron that's bent strong with a 3-iron shaft, and that goes 300 yards anyway. So it's basically for this kid to be, he'll be as good as he wants to be. It's like any of us, right?
Yeah.
You can have great people around you, but at the end of the day, even all those people who climb Mount Everest with the help of Sherpas, they still have to climb it.
Yeah, they have to do it themselves. Yeah. Tell me, so you went to Tennessee in college. What was your first experience with? How did you get to work with PGA Tour guys? Who was your first guy, and where were you? What were you doing when you started?
When I was at the John Jacobs Golf Schools, I did my extended on student visa.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically what happened was I couldn't continue to work in the States. And then they wouldn't vouch for me on a visa. So I then moved back to Toronto, did a bunch of odd jobs during the winter. And then Mr. Kern, Ben Kern, before he passed away, he got me hooked up with Tom Jackson at the Club Link Academy at Glen Abbey.
Okay.
And so right there at Glen Abbey, which I'd been to for years to watch Canadian Open, I started teaching there. And then I just became obsessed with being the best. And I think they're all I think most of those things that I did were probably driven by insecurity more than like true knowledge and desire to be a master of something. But I pushed and pushed, and I worked, 80 hours every week and waited tables. So I was, first lesson at 7, last lesson at 8 o'clock at night, either indoors or outdoors, and just going nonstop. And then at that time started studying biomechanics with some chiropractors and physiologists in the area, started looking into training, became a personal trainer as well to kind of understand how the body worked and also to supplement income. And then my first tour player that I got was in 2006. Some investors started the golf academy here in Orlando for Canadian junior golfers to kind of come down and be here for the year and do their schooling and what have you. And that's how I got my visa to work down here. And so I kind of started right back down here, right where I started, in 99 at Glen Abbey. Didn't know anybody, had no clients. And then 2 months into it, got a call from Stephen Ames, who'd seen a chiropractor in Canada who said that, we had worked together and that he thought a lot of what was hurting his back was mechanical. So Stephen gave me a call out of the blue. Flew down 3 days later, and we worked for 3 days. And then he hired me. I'll never forget it. I was like, I think I was probably like about $30,000 in debt. Coming down here, my wife had a good job at home. I was starting to really build my business, and then just said, all right, we got to go. Like, we got to go do this. And she was probably the only one who never questioned it. But everyone else did. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, and da-da-da-da-da. But I just knew I had to do it. And I knew that I would be successful doing it. And just like that, Stephen came, we worked. He wrote me a check for almost the exact number I was in debt for to cover my expenses for the year, and then said, I'll pay you 3% from today on of everything I earn on the course. And then he left me and flew over to the desert and then won the skins game. And that was it. And then from Stephen came Sean O'Hare. From Sean O'Hare came Hunter Mahan. From Sean and Hunter came Justin Rose, but mainly Sean, because Rosie played with Sean at the 2009 U.S. Open at Bethpage.
Yeah.
And Rosie was, getting to like 80th in the world. He had been as high as 5th at Oakmont. The first time I watched him play was Oakmont. And he was right there with a chance to win going in the final day. And so was Steven. Steven was in the second last group. Yeah, my first 2 majors that I went to with Steven, we were in the second last group at the U.S. Open and in the last group of the PGA Championship.
Wow.
Yeah, and we finished 10th in both. But
and you and I met at a major when I played Torrey Pines in 08. That's when you and I met. That's when I met Steve Ames. That's when I met all you guys, all the big Canadian golfers. I remember playing a practice round with Mike Weir. So that's, we go back a long time.
Yeah, and Steven, so I think Sean was that 2009 year. We went from like 72nd to 9th in the world in 9 months. And he missed 1 fairway and 2 greens in the first 36 holes at Bethpage Black. And Rosie was playing his ass off to just have a chance to make the cut. And Sean was making it look like a video game. And so they were on both sides of the tee, like rehearsing while they were waiting. And the rehearsals were so different. Basically, after they got done, I was in player dining, and Justin Rose tapped me on the shoulder and said, introduced himself. I said hello, and I was a big fan already anyways. And he goes, so I'm sitting on one of these tee boxes, and I'm doing what I'm doing, and he's doing what he's doing. And I'm thinking one of us are really wrong, and I think it's me. And so I met with him like a week later, and that was the start of that. So, the funny thing about life, right, and the reason that humility is so important is because if Sean O'Hare had hit it sideways for 2 days, I'd probably never meet Justin Rose the way I did. If Sean O'Hare didn't grow up with Hunter Mahan, I probably don't meet Hunter. And if Sean and Steven both didn't grow up kind of having similar father issues, then I probably don't meet Sean O'Hare, who kind of looked up to Steven for help with that. So there's so many things that have to happen in order for us to appear successful. And so many of them we have nothing to do with. It's all, there's just a lot of luck. And then when opportunity hits, you have to make the most of it, and go from there.
That was my next question. With all the players you've worked with, like, who approaches you? How does it work to get involved with a PGA Tour player? Is it the player himself that approaches you, the agent? You kind of touched.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It can be a caddy, it can be a parent, it can be a friend of a player, like another player. It's a lot like life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people hang out with the people they go to church with. People hang out with the people they play golf with. People hang out with the people they know. So you got a guy who's friends with a guy, goes to this coach, starts to improve. Then his friends going, what's going on? And it might be the worst fit for that guy ever.
Yeah.
And I think we see that a lot on tour, right? You'll see a lot of guys go to one area and guys go to another area and guys go to another area. And then, then there's the perception that people have, right? So a lot of tour players just thought, because anyone who knew me only knew me through really what the media presented, was that I was too technical for them. So, I mean, you don't know till you know, right?
Yeah.
So I never try to ever imagine what someone else is like or what they believe. I'd rather just go and speak to them and ask them, you know what I mean? So it's a good way to do it. But yeah, look, I mean, connections go a long way. So it's kind of, I think it's who you know, and then after that, it's what you know.
Exactly. And that's, I've always looked up to you, and I don't know if you've ever noticed, but our first 2-3 years, Hubbard and I on the PGA Tour, that's kind of how I've made myself a mind as far as teaching goes, because when Mark was done with his day, a lot of time I would grab his bag. Once he left the golf course, I would grab his bag and go back to the range, and I would go and put his bag in the stall right next to you, or next to Butch Harmon, or next to, Ledbetter when he was out there, or Cameron McCormick and all that. And that's kind of how I would just listen to what you guys did until I remember with Drew Steckel, it became a running gag because he literally understood that Mark was gone and I was just there to listen. So basically it was a running gag now to just leave the bag inside and come and listen anyhow. So I've forged a lot of Kevin Kirk is another one who started working with Mark.
That's Mike. I love Kevin Kirk. Kevin Kirk's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, and I'm so fortunate to have been able to listen to you guys because there's a big difference between how you work, how Kevin Kirk works, and because I'm going through it right now, how the PGA of Canada sort of throw the book at you as far as teaching seminars and all that. I find the way that PGA Tour coaches teach is a little more, it's almost simplified because it's not the same thing for everyone. You take what you have with the individual, like you said with Cameron Champ. If you would have gotten to Cameron Champ with only one idea and only the right way, he might not have the career he's having right now.
Well, what do you do when you put someone on force plates? And so everyone's saying, okay, so here's the deal. We're going to set up a little more pressure on our left leg so we can use that pressure to push us to the right. So the average tour pro starts out 60-40 left to right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then at the top of the backswing or around that area, they're kind of 80-20 right to left. And then at impact, they're kind of 85-15. And then you put a kid on there one day who's hitting it further than anyone you've ever seen, and he's only 15 years old. And he gets to the top of his backswing, and he's got 100% of the pressure in his left foot. And then at impact, he's got 100% of the pressure in his right foot. You have to look at that and go, maybe part of that is the reason that he hits it so far.
Correct.
But then you start digging deeper, and you start talking to like people in human movement and high level experts in human movement. So they don't look at the golf swing as the discus, hammer throw, shot put, very similar. The difference with the golf swing is the reason that strength is not imperative to create velocity is because the golf swing on the aspect of force production is more similar to badminton than it is throwing a sledgehammer. So a ground reaction force is exactly that. It's a reactive force. It's reacting to something in space. So my belief system leads me to believe that in real simple terms, in helping wounded warriors and soldiers who've been to war and have kind of, I've seen guys who were paralyzed from the waist down be able to get into a golf cart that's specialized and still carry the ball 275 yards. I've also seen guys with double leg amputations with prosthetic legs carry the ball 300 yards. But I've never seen anyone without arms hit it very far.
Mm-hmm.
So golf is very much a diaphragm up movement. So when we watch great ball strikers, we don't say that they have great pelvises. We say they have great hands. So I still think that, Bryson DeChambeau, he's put on all this muscle and he's like at 200 ball speed, right?
Yeah.
But when he was an amateur at Augusta, I asked him, I said, you hit it pretty far. So I appreciate these things that you're doing are helping your accuracy. But I think when it comes down to it, I remember at Augusta that day, him putting his hands low and making his stance wide and just hammering one. And he was like 185 ball speed. So to put 40 pounds in muscle, he only picked up 15 miles an hour. Right? So we've seen enough people hit the ball quite far who you would never pick out of a crowd as a real strong person. But I would argue that all those people who are on the smaller side who hit it far are very good athletes.
Yeah, think about Rory.
Oh, he's a joke. He's a joke. Rory looks, when Rory gets really lean and really fit, he looks like a gymnast.
Yeah.
You could teach a gymnast to hit a golf ball real nice.
Yes.
You couldn't teach a pro golfer to be a gymnast.
Rory's numbers with the driver are incredible. Like when you see him on track, man, the inside out path and the upward path in which he hits a driver, I've never seen that.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it a lot. But the thing is, it's just what he does.
Mm-hmm.
So if some guys try to get to that, they're going to end up with a two-way miss. That'd be career over. So yeah. It's like Kenny Perry. You ask Kenny Perry, hey, how do you hit such a nice draw? I don't know. Since I was a little boy, when I swing, that happens. So you're not doing anything to do that on purpose? No.
That was my example that I forgot to say earlier when I said about the one. He made an excellent career with one flight, and
yeah, especially when it went from the tour balata to the professional, and then the professional to the
Pro V1.
Pro V1, because he just couldn't curve it as much anymore.
Yeah. It's what's the best golf swing on tour in your opinion right now? Maybe technically and aesthetically.
Well, I mean, I think aesthetics don't matter, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how many beautiful models have eating disorders? So aesthetics is phony, right? It's elusive. So Adam Scott has a better golf swing than Jim Furyk, but Jim Furyk's been a better ball striker than Adam Scott. So if you look at approach play under strokes gained for the last 25 years, there's only one person who's ahead of Jim Furyk in approach play, and that's Tiger Woods. But commentators are still making fun of his swing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you understand the physics and geometry of the golf swing, Jim Furyk does it all right.
Yeah, he sure does.
So, I mean, that's the, I'll never forget, I think Cameron played with him somewhere, and Cameron had him by like 70 off the tee, and then had to walk the next 50 yards seeing a 5-wood 3 feet from the hole.
I remember we were paired with him at the 10th hole at Riviera, and he laid up to that back right pin, and we drove it by the green, and we're pin high, green side, and we're wondering how we're going to hit the green, and he's out there 110 yards, and I mean, it looks like there's nothing. And sure enough, his wedge, I mean, he's so dialed in with the wedges, it just, dances around the hole to 5 feet. And I'm looking at it, I couldn't believe the play of leaving himself that shot, but it's just, he did it 4 days in a row. It's just incredible.
Well, that's the thing, though, is he knows what he can do. He's a pro. He's such a pro. He
is.
He's probably wasted less shots than everybody else. He's incredible. He really is incredible. I mean, every single day he does banker's hours, 9 to 5, does his work, doesn't say much. Very kind guy, but very focused. He's the kind of guy that when my young players get out on tour, I beg them to spend as much time as they can with him.
Yeah.
I think the kid who really impresses me a lot is Colin Morikawa.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible ball striker. Obviously, Justin Rose, I'm biased. But the guys, I mean, for a few years there, I mean, if I had to have someone to hit it in the middle of the fairway and hit it on the green, I probably would pick Russell Knox too.
Yeah.
I mean, Bud, how many hybrids did you see him knife right down the middle of a flagstick?
A lot. A
right?
lot.
So
he got 5 head covers in his bag.
Well, that's my thing, though. Like he still, look, human beings have always had to adapt in order to survive. And the ones who do it the best are it's survival of the fittest. So, you can see Russell get in his head about not hitting it far enough and trying to learn how to hit it further and all that. But, that guy's had a really, really great career. And he's a really great hitter. So it's, there's ways to get it done.
What's just tell my viewers, what's a day like on tour for you? Do you try to have all your guys play practice rounds together, or are you at like on a Tuesday, for example, are you at the course from sun up to sundown?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, that in LA this year, I was giggling. I was walking home. I was lucky enough at LA to stay at my friend's house, and he lives right over the 13th hole at Riviera. And for 3 days in a row, I was the first person on the range and the last one to leave. And oh, beautiful! I have to hide it. Making Mother's Day cards here.
Very good.
Right?
It is Sunday.
Yeah, no doubt. No, that my son, his teacher, helped him make like his own card, which I think is cooler than buying one. But yeah, sun up till sundown. It's mostly chaos because you know what? They're not the most organized group of individuals. They might make a time, but they don't often show up at exactly that time. So. The pecking order is as they've come. So Justin Rose always gets to pick whatever time he wants to see me.
Because he's been with you the longest?
11 years, right?
Okay.
11 years. And then second now would be Cameron. Third is Danny. Fourth is Brendan Grace. Fifth is Lucas Beauregard. So basically, if Rosie says I want 1 o'clock, then I'm going to be with him from like 1 till 3. I think the future, though, I'd love to spend more time with players not on the road, because I think when you get on the road, you're there for one reason, and you're there to compete.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, as much as I've helped, I've hurt, because it's Thursday, we're about to tee off, and we're still working on it. And so, you know, you can look at the times you said something, they go out and blaze the course. But I think if you really paid attention, like if they're on the range and every shot's going slightly right, then just go play that and we'll work on it later, because it takes a lot of repetitions to create a new pattern. So how many reps am I going to make before I tee off? 40, 45, 50 balls?
Yeah.
So that's where I feel like I can get better going forward, is getting it more organized to where we can have 2 days in a non-combative environment and just work, rather than like the one thing with Danny Willett, going from outside the top 450 in the world, inside the top 30. Danny literally left England, moved into my neighborhood, and joined Isleworth. So I'd work with Danny twice a week, every week at home. When I'd see him on the road, I'd just kind of hang out. I mean, at that point, I'm there as a coach. So, you know, when they start overreacting and they're being ridiculous, then I just have to point that out. That's not professional. Like, get back to what you're supposed to do here.
Yeah. No, you're right. What's the importance of because there's a big debate that golf coaches don't have to be good players, or they had to be good players at some point. So that's my last questions before we get to a couple viewers' questions. Do you keep your game in shape for personal reasons, or is it just because you love the game, or is it important for you to keep your game at a high standard?
No, it's not. I think I felt it was when I was younger, but then as time went on, I just got so busy that I don't really have a standard. I can shoot 72 and then shoot 83 the next day. I can hit it out of bounds 4 times around and then the next day not miss a fairway. I don't think it's that important. I think what it's important is to be able to keep your skills up so you can show someone what you want them to do. So being able to hit spinning, like yesterday, one of my young kids on the web, or Corn Ferry, Bobby Bai, is a Chinese player, young kid, 25. This is his first year out there. He has been doing nice stuff with his swing. He hits it miles. And so we worked on pitching. And, you know, right out the gate, he plays pitch shots that bounce and roll out a lot. So the thing I like about him is he does what he knows he can do. Mm-hmm. But short-sighted and
more of a hook spin on the wedges.
No,
or?
It's not really. It's just not enough loft. It's not pretty.
Okay.
But he's kind of learned where he needs to land it and all that. So he really wanted to learn to hit low spinner. Well, the first 3 I hit, when I turned around and looked at him, he was in awe at how low it came out with how much spin. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important, is you got to know what it feels like and you got to know how it works. So if I got up to hit a 7-iron and I wanted to hit a cut or a draw, I can do it at will. It's not as impressive as when Justin Rose does it.
Yeah.
But I'm not Justin Rose. So I think that is important. But playing takes a lot of time. And for me, it's all about trying to be present in a world where you're busy with your players and then you come home and then spend the next 4 days trying to be super dad and super husband. And so for me, if I work on my game a lot, then I'm not going to be present with my family, and I'm not willing. My game's not that important, right?
Yeah, so it's more time consuming.
And then I think what happens is a lot of good players become coaches, and they're not really that helpful because a lot of times they just talk about what worked for them. They don't really know enough. Like, basically, some of my friends who just started teaching, who played, you know, either on tour or mini tours for a long time, they're asking me all these questions, but my only answer is like, I can't imagine how many golf lessons I've given. So you can know TrackMan, you can know 3D, you can know all that, but the only way to get wisdom is to have experience. So all those years that I taught, clinics and at John Jacobs, all those thousands and thousands and thousands of lessons I gave is really where I learned most of what I know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way to as long as you've been playing pro golf, I've been coaching every single day.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes down to it, it's not a fair fight, because your ability to communicate with people and different type of people, you just get better at it.
Yeah, which I've given quite a few lessons now since I got done caddying in 2018, accepted the position at Laval. So I taught a lot, and I'm starting to get involved with high-end players in Quebec. So what would be your best advice for a guy like me who's trying to get to where you're at?
I mean, I don't even know where I'm at. Right? I woke up at 6:45 this morning and called my friend Kevin Duffy in England, who is a trainer. He works with Danny and Tommy Fleetwood and all these guys. He's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant guy. And like I said, I was giggling that one day when I was walking off the range, because even after, I don't know, over 40, 45 wins by my players on the European and PGA Tour, money records on the web, money records on Symetra, and all that, I'm still the first guy and the last guy to leave. So, I mean, that would be my advice. Yeah. Like, if I'm going to stand there all day, at some point I'm going to get it right, in amongst getting it wrong a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It doesn't have to be perfect. You're right.
I say so many times in the lesson, hey, everything I just told you, just throw that in the garbage. I was completely not in the right place. So it's like that, right?
And that's why, from my years on tour, hiding beside you when you were giving lessons is one thing that, it's how frank you talk to those golf superstars, like how honest you are with them is really my first idea of a golf coach on the PGA Tour, is that he was always right, and then the player just does what he says. And by standing next to you and listening to how you intervene with your players, it's how much communication there is between, you want their feedback as much as they want yours.
Oh, you know how many times they've said something to me and then I've gone into my next round and started doing it, and it was so good. I was like, man, that was brilliant. So it's like, especially like in bunkers and around the green and stuff, I learned so much from those guys. And yeah, I mean, look, in many cases, you got to find a way to kind of skin the cat the other way and get them to think they came up with it, like it was their own idea. So I don't care whose idea it is or who thinks it was, as long as they do it, it doesn't really matter. So it's just recognizing that, when I started with Danny Willett, I had like a real tortured soul, right? I mean, this guy won the Masters and was 7th in the world, and then really fell hard. So I kind of had an idea at that standpoint that, okay, Pride doesn't really understand himself or his mind. His value system's probably altered. And then his understanding of what he's trying to do is not good. So it sounds funny, but I just told him how bad he was for a long time. And people would say, like, man, you got to be more positive. And it's like, so what? Be positive and know he's going to go out and shoot 80 in a left to right wind. Like, so sometimes telling people you're not good right now, like you're just not good.
Yeah.
That's important, because being honest, here's the deal, right? If you be yourself and you be honest with people, what's going to happen is you're going to lose relationships. And then the relationships that work, because there's such a high level of communication with a lack of people taking things super personally, your chemistry is going to flourish and you're going to go. So look, I'm not a great coach for a lot of players.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is to understand that and to know that player and talk to them and hang out with them, and then go, you know what? I've helped a lot of guys build their stable on tour, because guys asked me when I was really busy with so many guys, and I thought, you know what? I think this guy'd be really good for you. And you know what? When I look back at that, that ended up being they were really good together.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think at the end of my days, you know, I'm 45 right now. If at the end of my days, if I've been able to aid a lot of people in their own career, people doing the same job as mine, then that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, a few viewers' questions. Sebastian Tremblay wants to know, he's a teacher at Laval.
I know Sebastian, yeah.
Have you ever been out of solution for a player? And when you are you comfortable asking another coach for his opinion?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's constant. I have a group of people I can always talk to, people in human learning, people who are physios, chiros, people who are biomechanic experts, physicists like Sasha McKenzie, the Canadian from Nova Scotia. Not that often been other coaches, because I think there's people now who are more, I don't need to understand more about coaching. I might need to understand more about the physics of transition.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely coaches that in the past I've done that with. Yeah. I mean, myself, Jeff Smith, Dana, Scott Hamilton, John Tillery. I've always spoke openly about it with those guys. Lots of guys, Butchie, yeah, lots of people, man. I grew up reading everything that those guys wrote. So, you know, I do that all the time. Yeah. And then when I work with a new player, I have Mark Bull, who's a great 3D PhD, and he's also was a very good player. So that helps sometimes because he understands the lingo and the language. So I won't even tell Mark what we're working on, and I'll have my player go in and Mark will do a full assessment on him. And I really think the players appreciate that, because look, man, when you go to help someone and be a part of them achieving their dream, that is a very, very responsible decision you have to make.
Yeah.
Right?
It sure is.
Yeah. So if you want to get to this level, then you're going to have to be all right with knowing that you're going to be sacrificing a lot of your family time. And, you know, are you going to regret that? Are you going to be able to deal with it? It's a lot that goes into it. People always say to me, I'd really like to coach on tour. And I'm like, yeah, well, I guess because you don't know what it's like to coach on tour.
Yeah. Well, I've kind of lived the life on the player standpoint, then the caddy standpoint. And
yeah,
it's a life I really enjoy.
Look, a caddy and a player are only as good. A caddy and a coach are only as good as their player.
Correct.
That's how it's always going to be looked at. And then, caddy charge, say 8%, I charge 5%. That puts us at 13%. And then a lot of the time you just have to understand that even if you're at 5%, you're still going to get blamed. It's all good. But you're not getting blamed. The player's inability to understand, one, where blame comes from within someone. And then two, you just don't take it. I mean, it's just been a long time since I've taken anything personal, mate, because I don't think people, when they're upset at you, I still personally believe they're upset at themselves. They just can't see it.
Correct. No, you're right. Benoit Lemieux wants to know a few things that players. So, what are the main things that a player needs to perform on tour, and how do you make them practice that? So, give me like 2 or 3 keys of to be successful on tour, and how do you make your guys practice that? Is it like a consistent ball flight, good wedge play, putting, attitude?
Yeah, I mean, look, they all kind of have a pretty good idea of what all those things are if they're on tour.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, CEOs of top Fortune 500 companies are not late for work. They never are. Okay? So when you have players who are late for work every day, like, I don't know about you, but I'm only late to the things I don't want to be at.
Yeah. I'm never late. I mean, I have to wait for mine constantly.
Of course. No, of course. And so once again, it's not important to understand why they're late. You got to accept that they're going to be, but it's just the idea that that the world of high achievement, it's a different place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that people have nuances, they're strange, and all these interesting things, right? But I mean, for the most part, you know, if we're at a golf tournament where every par 3 is 230, we're not going to sit on the range and hit 8 irons all day because they go straight and look good. You know, it's a funny thing like about Augusta, right? Guys go out and miss greens because of side hill lies, and they come back to work on their swing on a flat surface. It's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we'd be better suited the week before Augusta to go on a bunch of side slopes with different irons try and hit the ball straight and see the effect of the lie.
I've never seen a flat lie at Augusta. It's
no, I don't, you know, I hardly have flat lies ever. So it's just really interesting, right? I think practice creates a real false sense of competency when it comes to golf. I remember one year I was on the range with Rosie, and he was hitting his driver before we teed off a big tournament. We're right there, and he was getting upset. And I just said to him, look, you never hit driver really good on the range anyways. And as soon as you get on the first tee, the target gets tighter and you just hit it straight. And he looked at me, he's like, you know what? I think you're right. So what's amazing is so many of the really great players I've met, they hit it better on the course than they do on the range.
correct. Yeah.
You know? So when people say I can't take it from the range to the course, I mean, look, if watch this, like people watching who teach or yourself, next time you go out and you start a lesson, get them to hit a sand wedge, a pitching wedge, a 9-iron, 8-iron, 7-iron, 6-iron, 5-iron, 4-iron, 3-iron, 3-wood driver. And tell me from those shots they hit how many bogeys they would have made on that first attempt.
Probably not a lot.
Probably, I find the tendency is that the first 2 shots are poor.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the third one, the fourth one. Then they get into the rhythm of it, the timing of it. Well, on the golf course, I hit a ball that I don't hit for 15 minutes. And so I could hit driver on the first tee, 3-wood on the second, 2-iron on the next, then a par 3, then a 2-iron, and now driver again. I haven't hit driver in over an hour. So I think the practicing by just raking and hitting and having alignment tools down and going to the same flag, they're like, man, I didn't miss a shot on the course, but I didn't miss a shot on the range. But if you really analyzed every shot, they missed a bunch of shots because if that shot needs to land 151, but go no further than 155, if you put a TrackMan on the range, how many times when they twirl it, is it landing 149 or 147, which would technically be plugging in the front bunker?
Yeah.
So it's still a good shot, but if you give them a number to hit to, you'll notice that it's not as good as it looks once the number comes up.
Exactly. And that's what I meant when I said no, is a lot of times on the range, you don't have any expectations at the beginning because you're just warming up, and then your expectations are way too high. Because when you get on the course, doesn't really have to be that perfect to work. You know,
expectations are unnecessary, because if you achieve what you expected, then it's just okay. And if you didn't, then you're frustrated. So expectations take all the joy out of life. You know what I mean? It's like, and joy is a necessary feeling that we have because we have to have something on the opposite side of pain. And that would be joy. So, yeah, when I get kids who come to me and they're having issues with their chipping, I literally will put them on the tightest lie or put them in some sand and make them do it there, because I find their tendency is to go down grain into the wind where they're safe.
Yeah.
Well, they're not getting better that way, right? Like what happens with Navy SEALs, right? They take 100 guys, they put them through a week of hell. At the end, there's 10 left. And then after a year, whoever's left, they call special forces. But it wasn't really how great they were. It was just their ability to endure pain and be tolerant to difficulty.
Correct.
That's what I have for you.
All right. Lastly, Yogi's rapid fire. Favorite sport team?
Don't really have one.
I hope you weren't going to say the Leafs, but that's okay.
Yeah, you know what? Because I didn't grow up really during those years in Canada, I never really got into hockey.
Okay. What's your handicap?
I'm a 3.
3 handicap. Excellent. While Alworth is very difficult, so a 3 handicap at Alworth is very, very good.
Well, not if you just got to play the right tees. Trust me, I'm not teeing it up at 7,200. I would end up falling on a sword at the end of
that. Would you agree to be my stylist?
I mean, you're French. You shouldn't need a stylist.
Oh, I do, my friend. I do. Your favorite on-course adult beverage?
Heineken.
Oh, a beer guy. Okay. And you've seen my swing. Should I take 2 weeks off and then quit?
No, I would say you probably quit because you got interested in looking at other people's swings.
I did. Well, I still play. I mean, I still play.
You're a good player? Hell yeah.
I still play the Canadian PGA stuff. I was actually player of the year in Quebec last summer.
Yeah, I mean that way. If you're player of the year in Quebec, you can make more money than you could on the web if you were player of the year.
That's right.
At least that's how it used to be, anyways.
It's not like that anymore, but it's very nice, and it's just nice to be back home and kind of give back what I've learned for almost 10 years on the PGA Tour. Being with the best players, the best coaches, and all that. I had the opportunity to make myself, like a bunch of knowledge and stuff like that. So it's nice to share that with the members at Laval, but also going forward with the elite players in Quebec. I think I could be definitely an instrumental person in not only guiding them towards the PGA Tour, but like you said, maybe pointing them to the right person if at some point I'm at a roadblock with them.
Yeah, plus the other thing too, which you can save them from as well, is all the garbage that you saw happen to players.
Yes.
That's a big part, right? I mean, I don't necessarily know what's right for people, but I have a pretty good idea of what's wrong for them. So if I can keep Danny Willett from doing the wrong things, we're going to have those moments where he's going to figure something out for himself. Because when it comes to learning, if you learn something on your own, it's way more powerful than if it's taught to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mr. Foley, I can't thank you enough for an hour and 17 minutes of greatness. As always, I really appreciate it. And
my pleasure.
Best of luck, and I'll see you on tour very shortly.
Okay, Johan. Have a great day, bud.
Thank you.
Peace.